How you guys doing this morning? You having a good show so far? Awesome, great. So welcome to Story Points Theater number 3. We realize you have choices when you choose your sessions here at Tableau Conference, so I appreciate you giving us some of your time today this morning. I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about the attributes of a modern data warehouse. My name is Jack Mardak. I'm a VP at Actian, based in the Bay Area, Palo Alto, California. A little bit about me. I've been a data nerd all my life. My first career was in banking in New York City, where I learned to build models in Excel. I moved to the Bay Area in the late 90s to work in technology and software, getting a chance there to work on larger data sets in the context of software and technology, as a marketing lead, as a head of growth, and as a leader of analytics teams, often those 3 roles at the same time. So before we dive into the main program, I wanted to take a moment to sort of consider the question, why does this matter? Why do data warehouses matter? Why are they important? And what value can you expect from the program for sitting here today? So it's a bit like a milkshake, I like to say. It's a metaphor. So the simple answer is that cloud data warehouses are an essential component of enterprises being able to realize their data analytics ambitions. So in this slide, I'd like to walk you through some of the use cases and some of the trends that are influencing cloud data warehouse demand. We start with looking at the traditional use cases, and by traditional use cases, we're talking about charts and graphs, reporting, ad hoc analysis, and data mining exploration. What's happening there is that we have many more data sources combined with many more users. And the reason that we have many more users has a lot to do with this conference. That relates to the democratization of access to data. So Tableau and other tools like it have lowered the bar of access, made it possible for a lot more people to be able to perform these kinds of analysis than historically without the usual technical skills. That continues to happen. We continue to see a dramatic trend in the democratization of access so that we have lots more people looking to get lots more charts from many more data sources. The data sources in the enterprise are proliferating for multiple reasons. As we know, there are a lot of SaaS applications that are generating data. For example, businesses have their own digital experiences, websites, mobile applications, all of which are generating a lot more data. And if that much weren't alone, there is also increasing interest in having that data available in nearer and nearer to real time. For these traditional use cases, where it used to be okay to have yesterday's data, that is no longer okay. So we're looking for real-time, nearer and nearer to real-time data as attached to these traditional use cases. Now we have something really exciting happening as well, which is the emergence of some new use cases that are really important and exciting. It's kind of a sea change. A good way to think about it is enterprises have been on a 100-year journey, let's say, on mastering the reporting and the charting and the knowledge of events in the past, right? For a long time, that was the raison d'etre of reporting and analytics. What happened, what customers did it, what did they do, what did they spend? Now we're seeing something important happen where it's kind of now appropriate to say analytics, because a shift from the reporting function is beginning to happen where more and more data is being used to drive real-time operation, real-time events in the customer experience. So it's not anymore just about rendering charts and having insights about the past, but now it's using analytics in this very active operational way to drive what happens inside companies, to drive what happens at the level of customer experience. And this depends on the same resources as the traditional use cases, thus really increasing the importance of the data warehouse resource. I like to describe it as more enterprises, more companies gain the powers to leverage masses of data about individual customers in real time at scale to drive some of these use cases like customer 360, hyper-personalization, and one of my favorites, contextual communications, which is now that we have the conversation happening in digital experiences, chat, the contact center as we knew it has exploded, so companies now have this opportunity to get their arms around the totality of the customer conversation, to know what the customer is doing and thinking, and to leverage that knowledge to drive better business outcomes. So now with these demands in mind, and these value creation opportunities in mind, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the generational evolution of the data warehouse. So this is an important and exciting journey. It began 20, 30 years ago with the appliances, the Netezas and the Teradatas and the Exadatas of the world. These were the first time that integrated hardware, software stacks had been created in the service of analytics, and they were breathtaking in their acceleration of analytics performance versus the world of before. So these are worthy of reverence and absolute respect. They changed the world when these things came out. But they came with some constraints that in the ensuing years we've learned to understand and work around. For example, being boxes. If you needed more, you're talking about capital expenditures versus operating expenditures. You had to literally buy more boxes. It was very hard to get data in and out. To make the analytics function work around these kinds of systems, you needed a small army of administrators of various kinds to see both to the maintenance of the appliances as well as the ingestion processes. Getting data in and out of these boxes was really arduous and time consuming. And thus the time to value from these was quite long. The appliances also suffered from important constraints around concurrency. If you had anything more than, say, a couple of dozen simultaneous users at the same time, these systems really began to struggle. So enter now the next generation, which is the cloud. So here the big player is obviously Redshift, which was the first provider of data warehouse as a cloud solution. Important acceleration and capacity there. The time to value dropped significantly. It became much easier to get data into these systems in the form of S3. S3 as a storage function was hugely important to the success of this generation. Interestingly, and this is something that we appreciate looking back now, compute and storage were sold together in a weirdly now, in hindsight, inelastic way, and that made it somewhat challenging because you had to buy the compute that you needed in tandem with the storage that you needed, and so it was rather costly. And there was still rather significant technical attention necessary to make these systems work. So now enter the next generation, and the representative company there is, of course, Snowflake, and they innovated tremendously by separating cloud and compute for the first time, and so that made it possible for the first time for enterprises to consider their compute needs. And we understand what we mean by compute needs, which is the processing power needed to do the analytics versus the storage, which is where the data lives. So it was absolutely revolutionary to be able to separate those things and provision them according to the needs of your particular enterprise. Also, since now we're leaving behind just the Redshift scenario, which was naturally just on AWS, enter the multi-cloud world. Very important, since multiple clouds exist and are available to enterprises, and there are various good reasons to choose one cloud over the other, and enterprises want to feel free to be able to leverage those reasons and choose the best cloud for them. Snowflake also evolved and improved on the world of before, which was Redshift, by introducing a number of third-party, or rather relying on a number of third-party integrations that made it a lot easier to get data into these systems. And so the total cost of ownership dropped significantly. It also lowered the bar of access so that lots more companies, really SMBs even, the bar was lowered in terms of for whom it was reasonable to acquire and get a data warehouse. Much lower bar of access and accessibility, much lower total cost of ownership, and the time to value also drops significantly. So now we go to what we call Gen 3, and Avalanche is a product that we represent. It's an Avalanche product. We launched it earlier this year, And now the focus is really on the compute piece, right? So where we look back on the innovations of the past, the breakthroughs of the prior generations, we see that really what's needed is dramatically accelerated compute performance. And so we describe our compute as essentially the Ferrari of the cloud compute world. And so that is a significant innovation, and I'll talk to you a little bit more later about what use cases that impacts and what a difference that makes. And so of course, storage and compute is still separated, but now the compute has become fundamentally more powerful, and that has a big impact on some of those use cases that I referenced in the prior slide, those demanding use cases, for example. Also, because Actian has its own robust data integration solution, we're able to take a step forward from the reliance on third-party integrations and offer our customers a robust capability to ingest data from the data sources that are available to them through our own native data integration technology, which on its own competes with the likes of Informatica and Talend, for example, among others. So now with the history in mind and with the use cases in mind, let's distill essential requirements of a modern data warehouse. So an important consideration is you want to be able to put analytics where you need it, where your data is, wherever that location is. That's important because you may have a complex pre-existing data architecture. If you look at the total footprint of data warehouse in the world, sure, Redshift is growing explosively, Snowflake perhaps even faster than that, but the large majority, the vast majority of data warehouses are still on these appliances. And these enterprises have been, the IT teams that have at these companies that still have boxes, they've looked at the innovations and the revolutions of the past few years, Hadoop coming and going, for example. There was a big rush, say, to enter the Hadoop ecosystem a couple of years back, and folks who did, enterprise teams who did, encountered some unexpected difficulties. And so from the perspective of the people that stayed on those boxes, that looks like a really good decision to have stayed on those boxes. So we're going to have appliances out there in the enterprise world for a while yet to come, and there are good reasons to keep them, data governance being one of them, for example. Some companies, in order to put in place their own governance policies to comply with the privacy regulations, GDPR, CCPA, for example, will decide to keep some of their data on premises where they can exert the kind of control over it that they want. So very important that in the data warehouse solution, you have the power to put it where you need it. This piece I referenced a little bit earlier, and so raise the absolute compute performance ceiling. This is critically important because we're making unprecedented demands on cloud data warehouses that are attached to some of these high performance, data intensive use cases where you rely on real-time data access, where caching is not an option, for example. Our competitor Snowflake relies heavily on caching, for example, as a way to deliver some of the performance that it needs, which is fine for certain use cases, but say when you're doing real-time analytics or using analytics in some of these more operationally driven ways, and you have changing queries, you have changing data sets, the caching part is completely irrelevant. And so it was essential to raise the absolute compute performance ceiling, where you have big data sizes, thousands of users, as is potentially the case in large enterprises, and high query complexity. And to that I would add the demand for streaming data, real-time data. The query that you ran 5 minutes ago or 5 seconds ago is now pulling entirely different data, potentially, because that has been streamed freshly into the system in that time. The third element is unparalleled unit economics, and this is worth thinking about separately from the raise the compute performance ceiling, although they are related. And so unparalleled unit economics means that when you have a Ferrari, you don't need to buy 8 Priuses, which might cost more than a Ferrari to do the same work and actually not deliver the same performance. So unparalleled unit economics means that at scale, you can provision the compute resources that you need, and it turns out to be cheaper than anything else, anything possible, because you can only put so many Priuses behind some of these intensive analytics workloads and use cases. Then your rules over your data. So this relates to the first point, which is put data where you need it. So more and more, every company, CCPA now, for many of you may be familiar, is the soon to be released California Consumer Privacy Protection Act. And that means that a lot more companies than, say, had to worry about this when GDPR rolled out a year ago are now having to worry, perhaps for the first time, some of these smaller companies around data privacy and data governance policies. And so your system should not conflict with that. It should in fact be a solid partner to you in being able to create the kind of data governance oriented architecture that your company requires. And then the last piece is make it a pleasure to use. So I spoke a little bit earlier about how easy it is to get data in and out. We also make it very easy to spin up clusters, to get data warehouse capabilities easily and instantly in a friendly user experience. Easy to get data in, that relates uniquely to us, to our data integration capability, where we have this robust enterprise level data integration solution that makes it very easy to get data in and out of your system. And then this last bullet is controversial and interesting, but folks in IT will understand this, that you have to provision for your peaks in mind, right? If you know that for whatever reason, every fourth Thursday of the year, for example, you have a dramatic increase, a 10x increase owing to some particular process in your company where you have a lot more demand on the system. So it would make, normally in the world of appliances, for example, just to harken back all the way there, you'd have to have all the boxes that you needed in order for that peak to work. And so you'd be paying for, in this completely inelastic way, you'd be paying for the compute and the storage resources that you needed just for those peaks. So it's very important to be able to go up and down as needed in this elastic way so that your peaks can be achieved, right? And that's where that Ferrari really makes a difference. Your peaks can be achieved, but you're also not paying for that potential when you're not at those peaks. Very important point as you consider the needs of data warehousing in the enterprise. And so with those requirements in mind, and with that history, with that generational evolution in mind, we developed the Avalanche Gen 3 Cloud Data Warehouse Service. And I'll describe to you some of those components. So it begins with a multi-cloud and hybrid approach. This relates to the necessity of being able to put the data where you need it. If you're still on boxes and are slowly migrating to the cloud, for example, this is great for you, since this allows you to stand up analytics and apply it under one common architecture wherever your data is, no matter what its source complexity may be, multiple clouds, even different boxes as well. So we provide support there as well as for a number of container solutions such as VMware. The next component I referred to a little earlier, and this is all your data sources. So we have a fantastic product called Data Connect, which is available separately, but which delivers incredible value combined with the data warehouse solution, since now this makes it easy to have what we call a connected data warehouse, which is the combination of the capabilities you need to contend with your data complexity, multiple sources, your SaaS apps, et cetera, and easily get that data in to a cloud data warehouse. And again, wherever you want to send it, whether that's boxes, because you still have boxes, Azure, AWS, Google Cloud, et cetera. Very important aspect of the service. The third stack in the layer is storage. We already discussed how and why it is very important for storage and compute to be available separately so that IT teams can provision those things separately. We take that one step further by managing the storage in a very smart, algorithmically driven way so that we optimize the storage that you do buy. More so, we use EBS storage on AWS, which is like 10x the performance of S3. For example, the popularity of Redshift owed a lot to the easy ability. Developers already had data in S3, so it made it really easy to get into a cloud data warehouse, which was fundamentally enabling, but now S3 we know is sort of a commodity level of storage that has a lot of constraints. So we don't bother with S3. We go directly to EBS. It's a little bit more expensive, but again, if you're an enterprise who's chasing those mega ambitious analytics use cases, you wouldn't be using S3 anyway. And on Azure, we use ADLS Gen 2 as well. The fourth piece is peeling the skin back on what makes our compute engine a Ferrari. So industry standard SQL is important, since that's a performance implication as well as an ease of use implication. Vector processing is something that we have a patent on. None of our competitors have it. It is a true, real technological difference that no other data warehouse provider has. Vector processing, just to keep it simple for you, is the ability to leverage multiple cores around common compute requests. We can distribute leveraging the L1 and L2 cache, which is much, much faster than RAM, in order to do computation in that space, in that memory space, distributed across as many cores as you have in your system. This is so dramatically accelerating over other things that we've had customers that we were doing POCs with disbelieve their own results, because they were seeing things like queries that took days happen in minutes. No joke. So this is real, and this is a technological innovation that we have with a patent attached to it that no other competitor has. Real-time updates. Another constraint of some of the systems is that you have to kind of shut things down when you want to get more data in. Not so with Avalanche. We make it easy for you to continue to work, continue to operate while running updates. So the need to update data doesn't mean downtime. Query resource optimization. This is also proprietary, and this is the dynamic assessment and allocation of both compute and storage resources in real time based on the queries that you're running. This is proprietary to us, and no other competitor has it. The last piece is federated query. Super powerful when you consider the hybrid aspect, the promise and the value of being able to install one analytics platform across all of your data sources, whether boxes or multi-cloud. Federated query means you can run common queries across all of those data sources simultaneously. Super powerful and super value creating. For example, you imagine you're an enterprise where you have a significant transactional database that is on premises, and you want to use that in an operational way to drive customer experience, for example. This would make that possible, whereas you'd struggle with some of the other vendors. And last but not least, we made it really easy for the different personae in your organization to get the kind of access to the cloud data warehouse that they need, whether for data analysts, data architects, data engineers, whatever the role, we have the tools and the capability that make it possible for them to work with the cloud data warehouse using the tools that they need, Tableau obviously being an important one in that ecosystem. Cool. And so that is what I had for you guys today. I hope that it wasn't too pitchy and you came away with some learnings and some information. Things to do now, if you happen to be in the market or modernizing your data warehouse, come visit us at booth number 544, just around the way. Visit actian.com/avalanche for more information about the product that I've just described to you. If you heard anything here today that resonated with you, tweet it out. I'm at 2HP, and Actian is at Actian Corp. It was a pleasure addressing you guys today. Thank you so much again for your time this morning. And don't forget to do this part. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. If you enjoyed this talk today, I would appreciate a thumbs up in the evaluations. Y'all have a great rest of the conference. A pleasure.